All right, Chapter 23, Evolution and Our Heritage. All right, so in this section, we're going to start off by talking about the origin of life. Biomolecules are simply those organic molecules of life. Life seemingly originated 3.5 to 4 billion years ago from non-living matter in a series of four specific stages, starting off with small organic molecules. These would have been the really simple organic molecules like monomers, which would have evolved from inorganic compounds. So things like amino acids, nucleotides, all of those monomers that make up the polymers of biomolecules. The four stages of the origin of life would include moving up from small organic molecules would include macromolecules. Macromolecules are organic monomers, or when organic monomers join together to form larger macromolecules like polymers. So this is going to be that transition from amino acids and nucleotides to DNA, RNA, and proteins. Protocells, or protobionts, these would have been the first cell precursors. Polymers became enclosed inside of a membrane, and eventually living cells formed. Those protobionts, they acquired the ability to self-replicate. So steps 1 through 3 in the process of chemical and biological evolution are specifically chemical evolution. We have early Earth, inorganic chemicals, small organic molecules, and then those small organic molecules undergo polymerization. Stage 4 is when we first see life evolving, where the protocell becomes the cell, where we start to see the plasma membrane encase those polymers, and life beginning the processes of replication. Earth's early atmosphere was going to be formed by gases escaping from all the volcanoes. These gases had very, very little oxygen available. This atmosphere would also be extremely hot, so water would not be existing in its liquid form. It would only be a gas that could form very dense clouds. As the Earth eventually cooled, that water vapor is going to condense to liquid water. Rain would begin to fall to the Earth. That rain could then wash gases and other chemicals into the oceans. So it was ultimately rainfall that was responsible for creating the oceans here on planet Earth. Primitive Earth may have had many sources of energy, things like volcanoes, meteorites, radioactive isotopes. All of those things could have contributed to lightning, ultraviolet radiation. All of those could have contributed to energy on Earth. Gases would have used this energy to react with one another to form small organic compounds. So that's that transition from inorganic molecules to organic compounds. In 1953, Stanley Miller performed an experiment to simulate the Earth's early environment to show how the addition of electricity could have transitioned from inorganic molecules to organic molecules. So to simulate the Earth's early environment, he heated materials believed to have been present and then circulated it past an electric spark. After a week, the solution contained amino acids and organic compounds. There are other hypotheses on how the first small organic monomers may have evolved. Thermal vents at the bottom of the oceans provided all the elements and the conditions necessary to synthesize organic monomers. Some have theorized that comets and meteorites have organic molecules that could have seeded the chemical origin of life on early Earth. Some have proposed that bacterium-like cells may have evolved first on another planet and then were carried to Earth. A meteorite from Mars had tiny rods in it, similar in shape to fossilized bacteria. So that is the origin for the proposal that life may have originated outside of Earth and then brought to this planet. So there are two hypotheses to explain how small organic molecules joined into larger polymers. So there's the idea of the RNA first hypothesis, that only RNA was needed to form the first cell, could have carried out very basic processes of life usually associated with DNA and proteins. The protein first hypothesis is that amino acids join together when exposed to dry heat. This may have collected in small, shallow puddles where heat from the sun caused them to form proteinoids, or small polypeptides that have catalytic properties. So we ended up with these enzymes first, which then seeded the rest of life. When proteinoids are placed in water, they form little microspheres, structures that are composed of only proteins that have a lot of the same properties of a cell. A protocell is an early cell that carried out metabolism but couldn't really reproduce. It could have formed if lipids mixed together with those microspheres. This first stage of life would have been a heterotroph, an organism that takes in organic material as food. It would have had to have been a fermenter because there was no free oxygen on the earth this time. So it would have had to break down its energy and its fuel source with fermentation. The RNA first hypothesis about how the cell first acquired DNA and enzymes for reproduction includes the idea that the first cell had RNA genes that could have specified protein synthesis, including enzymes. One of these enzymes could have used RNA as a template to then back translate and form DNA. Replication of DNA would then have proceeded normally. Some of the proteins in the protocell were able to synthesize DNA from the nucleotides found in the ocean. Then DNA specified protein synthesis. The cell acquired all of its enzymes, even those that were needed to then replicate DNA. There are alternative theories that polypeptides and RNAs would have evolved simultaneously, and the first true cell would have contained RNA genes that could have replicated. All right, so you should be able to discuss why chemical evolution was necessary for biological evolution to occur. I would like you to just be comfortable with that Miller experiment that demonstrated the formation of the first organic molecules, and discuss the importance of RNA in the formation of the first protocells.